The defendant corrected the judge, and the courtroom froze. By the time the judge began reading from his notes, most people in the courtroom believed the case was already over. The arguments had been made, the evidence had been reviewed, the testimony had been heard, questioned, and repeated until it felt exhausted. What remained was formality. The defendant stood quietly at the defense table, hands resting loosely in front of him. Middle-aged, well-dressed, the kind of person who blended into a crowd. He had barely spoken during the entire trial. No emotional reactions, no visible frustration, just silence. The jury watched the judge, not the defendant. Pens moved across notepads as the judge summarized the case in a steady, procedural tone. Dates, locations, times, the language of finality. This was the part of the trial where nothing usually changed. As the judge continued, the courtroom settled into a familiar stillness. Attorneys listened without interruption. The prosecutor sat back, confident. The defense attorney stared straight ahead, saying nothing. Then it happened. The judge mentioned a detail, just one, a small piece of the timeline, a single word that most people wouldn't have questioned. It sounded correct. It fit neatly with everything else that had been said. Almost no one noticed it. Almost. The defendant's head lifted slightly. Not sharply, not suddenly, just enough to signal attention. His posture didn't change. His hands didn't move. His face showed no emotion. But his eyes fixed on the judge. The judge continued reading. The courtroom stayed silent. Then the defendant spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Your Honor, that's not correct. The words didn't echo. They didn't demand attention. They were calm, respectful, almost apologetic. But they landed like weight. The judge stopped reading. The pen in his hand hovered above the page. The courtroom froze. For a moment, no one reacted. It was as if the room needed time to process what had just happened. Defendants don't correct judges. Not during final summaries. Not at this stage. The judge looked up slowly, more surprised than irritated. He asked the defendant to repeat himself. The defendant did. He explained the correction carefully. He didn't argue the verdict. He didn't challenge the authority of the court. He simply corrected the detail the judge had just stated. A time, a sequence, something subtle but specific. The room shifted. The judge glanced back down at his notes, then at the evidence. The prosecutor frowned slightly, flipping through documents. The defense attorney didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smile. Because the defendant was right. The detail the judge had read aloud didn't match the record. It wasn't a major error on its own. It didn't overturn the charge. It didn't erase the crime. But it cracked something open. Because that detail had been repeated before. Quietly. Assumed. Never questioned. And now it had been corrected by the one person everyone assumed had the least credibility. The judge paused. The courtroom waited. No one spoke. No one coughed. Even the sound of shifting chairs felt inappropriate. The judge asked the attorneys to approach. The microphones didn't pick up what was said. The jury watched body language instead. Subtle movements. Tight expressions. Quick glances exchanged between lawyers. The judge ordered a short recess. When the courtroom reconvened, the atmosphere was different. The confidence was gone. The judge addressed the jury carefully. He explained that a clarification was needed, that a portion of the timeline required review. The defendant returned to his place at the defense table. He said nothing more. He didn't look at the jury. He didn't look at the attorneys. He had done what he needed to do. From that moment on, every word spoken in the courtroom sounded different. Testimony that once felt solid now felt slightly unstable. Assumptions that had gone unchallenged suddenly felt exposed. The correction didn't prove innocence, but it introduced doubt. And in a courtroom, doubt is powerful. The judge continued, more cautiously now. Each sentence measured, each detail checked. The rhythm of the proceedings slowed. The defendant remained silent. He didn't add context. He didn't explain why he knew the detail. He didn't take advantage of the moment. He simply stood there. Some trials are decided by evidence, others by emotion. This one shifted because of accuracy, because a single sentence, spoken calmly, reminded everyone that certainty should never be assumed. When the session ended, the defendant was escorted out without looking back. The jury would deliberate. The system would continue. But the courtroom would remember that moment. Not because it changed the outcome immediately, but because it changed how the case felt. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing said in court isn't an argument, isn't a confession. It's a correction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories like this.